didn't get it. So I went over and gave her a quick listen. Right then and there, the take we used. That was real.
She flipped it?
Yeah, you know, the tilt up from the duck cheek where we first show her face. That confidence you see, that's all real. Because she'd finally managed to flip it over. And that's the take we used.
The thing about the frontman is, I never really considered the possibility that he'd make it to the end of the series. But that's what happens. He goes to the United States and meets Gi-yoon's daughter. And really, seeing him return all of Gi-yoon's things, as if he was keeping a promise to himself, I thought, well, on the one hand, it's a definitive ending, but...
You know what'd be cool? I want to see Frontman's whole life story told at some point. You know, before the events of the show, him going through the games, and then what happens to him after season 3. That's what I want. It could be its own show called Frontman.
I want to see it too. What do you say, Director Wong?
Well, hold on. We only just crossed the finish line with this series. So any kind of plans for a spin-off will probably have to come later. Let's let things settle first. Once we do, we can think about it.
You know, what I was most curious about as I read through the script was how it would all end. And then when I got to the last page, I saw Gi-yoon's final scene and I was a little surprised. I thought, oh, so this is it. This is the choice he made. I could feel Gi-yoon's state of mind. And when I look back and I think of all the different characters I've ever played or ever seen or read, what Gi-yoon does, it almost has this religious feel to it.
I really agonized over what Gi-yoon's ending should be. How can I give Gi-yoon a send-off that feels right for the series? I'd considered another ending too. What if Gi-yoon survives in the end and goes to meet his daughter? I thought, should he be the one to meet Ga-yeon? And also, should he be the one who meets the recruiter in the US? Should Gi-yoon see the game over there? But while writing seasons 1, 2, and 3 and seeing the path Gi-yoon ultimately ends up walking, understanding each and every beat of this character's emotional journey, I realized that by the time Gi-yoon's story was coming to a close, he had committed a sin during the game, in whatever shape or form. So in the end, I thought Gi-yoon showing us this symbolic message by sacrificing himself, as though he were in our place, was the most fitting conclusion to Squid Game. It's the ending that stayed the truest to the core character of Gi-yoon.
We are not horses. We are humans. And humans are...
I knew I wanted to end with "We are not horses, we are humans." But I wanted to continue with, as humans, this is what we should do. As humans, this is how we should be. And starting now, this is how we can turn this world of ours into a better one. But as I wrote that all out, it became clear I couldn't sum this up in a single line. People are far too complex to be defined categorically like that. And if I sent the viewers a message that was so explicit, so normative and didactic, it would actually only serve to limit the message itself. So I decided the rest of what I wanted to say would instead be expressed physically by Gi-yoon, through his actions, through his deeds, and the sacrifice he makes to save that child.
I also thought, in that scene, if our message was complete, with nothing left to interpretation, then the audience would just leave it at that. They'd go, that's how it all ends. If we had gone that route, the story would have just had one single conclusion. But because we left the last part of the message open-ended, it feels like we're continuously communicating back and forth with the audience. So the end's a conversation. We throw you a question. This is what I think, but what do you think? I bet a lot of people are gonna see the final episode and realize, oh, this show is very different from the kind of stuff I'm used to seeing. The way I think about it is, how do I put it? Well, rather than presenting these themes obviously right on the surface, I felt like we took a more subtle approach with the ideas we wanted to explore. They sort of permeate the show, under the surface. Everything's carefully planned. So for that scene, I started by wondering, how am I going to act this moment out? As the actor, do I need to convey the emotion more explicitly? Or instead, should I, like the writer, who's also our director, find a way through whatever kinds of different choices to make my performance in that final scene more open-ended? I was really torn about that. So we got all sorts of takes with varying levels of emotions when we shot that day, but it felt like there was no right answer.
Right. That scene wasn't really in search of a particular solution. I remember that in a few of the takes, you shed tears. But in my opinion, the take we used, the one you've all watched, I really think that was the take that matched what Gyun was feeling inside. By then, you'd also been on a diet for nearly a year. Then at the end, to look even more haggard, you went on an even stricter diet to show the progression from the start of the games. As a result, I think even without saying a word, those feelings were evident in your expression, your face, your outward appearance. That diet was tough, right?
Well, yeah, but what was worse,
You couldn't really eat with us.
when you get to share meals with your colleagues, I mean, yeah, that's your time to eat. But to be honest, those are really the times when you get to engage in conversations and bond with everyone. All those meals are important. That's one of the ways you grow closer to your castmates. But I didn't get to do that this time, and I regret missing out on that.
I thought you were secretly stuffing your face in your car. I had so many conversations with Director Wong as we were filming to try and really figure out what Frontman was thinking, what was going through his head. I wonder, what's Frontman thinking as he watches Gyun go through the games? Although, I'm not sure how much of that is really shown or made apparent in the show. But before the last game, when Frontman suggests to the VIPs that the child should become a participant as Player 222, I did start to think that there was still this tiny part of me that genuinely cared about the baby and wanted to save its life. And watching Gyun, I think I probably felt a sense of inferiority almost. In the end, I became this terrible person, but Gyun stayed true to himself. Frontman saw all that. So I think one of the thoughts that probably dominated Frontman's mind, at least partly, was, in the end, you really did it. You accomplished what I couldn't. Then in the finale, when he's holding the baby, that's a very human moment. The kind of thing that might remind him of his past. That small beat there is maybe the first time we get a glimpse of his humanity.
For me, ultimately, even though I'm the one who wrote it, after everything, Frontman grabs all of Gyun's money, puts it into the account, grabs the card, and goes out of his way to deliver it to Gai Young, along with Gyun's bloody uniform. That was the moment that made me realize how complex the character was. He didn't just deliver the money, but the tracksuit too. And it wasn't even washed. He just gave it to her like that, with the blood still on it. Like, what's going on in his head?
Director Wong and I talked about that. How at the end, when viewers see that, they're going to start speculating about what his motivations are. So even though the season just wrapped, I'm curious. A few items that Frontman gives to Gyun's daughter. How will that be interpreted? I bet there's going to be a wide range of reactions.
I was just going to have Frontman give Gai Young the money, but I realized it'd be nice if he also gave her Gyun's tracksuit. Because for Gyun, it was almost like a symbol. The money itself doesn't have any traces of it. So I wanted there to be something that Gyun had actually left behind. When given to his daughter, it holds a part of Gyun. His hard work, his struggle, his tears, his snot, even the blood from when he killed someone. When he killed Daeho, that soaked into the fabric. Gyun's entire history is in that green tracksuit. When his daughter gets it, it's exactly as it was. That was the
Yes,
thought.
but that could still be read in a number of ways. On the one hand, he made it a point to personally deliver not just the money, but her father's clothes too. Which makes me think he did it so she could figure out if something bad had happened to him. So there's that. But on the other hand, looking at it another way, it's a very cruel thing to do to her.
It's true. That's
Going
another-
to a young girl like that and just handing her the clothes her dad was wearing when he died that still had his blood on them. I thought that was pretty brutal.
In that way, I think it's safe to say he's a little frightening. Frontman is still kind of a scary guy. He shows up dressed like he's from a funeral home.
Right.
Dressed so well, delivering those things. There's a duality.
a project, when I'm working as an actor, my character is driven, whether by the writer or the director, and I typically have a firm grasp of the person I'm portraying when I act. But with a character like Inho in Squid Game, I feel like I was constantly talking to director Wong. We were building this persona together right until end of production. So now, when I look back, I think, rather than speaking and acting with one singular emotion, there were actually multiple meanings and intentions behind every little thing he did and said. Even there in his office, when he hands Gi-yoon that knife, I think there was a part of him that was really looking out for Gi-yoon because he felt this kinship. But at the same time, he thinks that Gi-yoon will eventually change, the same way he did all those years ago. But seeing Gi-yoon fight against those impulses, I feel like he might have also felt somewhat inferior to him in comparison.
Player 456. He wants to see you.
The scene that takes place in Frontman's office, after Gi-yoon is brought up to meet with him, that's a very important interaction between Gi-yoon and Inho. When you think of the history that exists between these two men, at this point, it feels like it's been going on and on for ages. I mean, really, they only first met recently, but it still somehow feels like they've known each other for quite a while. We've seen them help each other, and we've seen them betray each other, and because of that, I really felt like these two characters had developed this long, storied history together, even if it hadn't really been that long. And so, when Inho sees Gi-yoon step out of that elevator, I think his head must be swimming with all sorts of thoughts. And the same is true for Gi-yoon too. When Inho takes off the mask and Gi-yoon sees who Frontman's been this whole time, all these emotions rise up. And then when Inho sees Gi-yoon's reaction, he's got to think, what choice is he going to make? I think Inho's actually dying to know that. And of course, Gi-yoon's thinking that too. What should I do? What choice do I make? Or even, why is he giving me this opportunity? Why is Inho forcing me to make this choice? So now you have these two very complex people sitting in this tiny room, all that tension. There's so much going on. I just love that whole scene.
Both when I was writing the script and when we shot that scene, honestly, starting when you two first interact in the limo, when Gi-yoon's blindfolded and first hears you people are horses, all the way up to when Jung Bae is killed, I wondered how you would be able to express that, to show that evolution. Also, I thought Gi-yoon might feel the need to stab Inho with the knife, right as soon as he had it. It was a delicate balancing act of competing emotions. The whole scene was tough to get right, both as a writer and a director, because of course Gi-yoon was manipulated and betrayed without a doubt. But there were also moments where he trusted and relied on Inho, albeit briefly. So when he summons Gi-yoon, unmasks himself, and makes him this offer, I figured that all those memories, those thoughts and those feelings would well up at once, and Gi-yoon would be so overwhelmed he would hesitate and not be able to do it. Then, well, like Inho said, in that moment, the most important thing is the child's life. It depends on him, on Inho's words. Getting all that across was key. It's the heart of the scene, and you both, well, you just saw it for yourself. Did such a fantastic job. At that point, Inho maybe wants Gi-yoon just to give up, to stop being so stubborn, harping on and on about humanity and get out with the baby, who he wants to save. The biggest difference between Gi-yoon and Inho is perhaps that while Inho was on the inside playing the games, he never met someone like her, someone like Sebyok. Gi-yoon, because he did meet her, was able to retain his humanity. I actually think that's the most important moment in all of season 1. Gi-yoon, he's about to kill Sang-woo, who's fallen asleep. He pulls out the knife. He's about to walk over, but Sebyok stops him. She uses the same exact lines. That isn't you. You're a good person at heart. I thought those words were incredibly important for someone to tell him. You're a good person at heart. I thought that line was what finally reminded Gi-yoon of his humanity. Those words, they brought to the surface the last shred of his humanity, which Gi-yoon had nearly let go of. And I think because they came from Sebyok, who had seemed so cold, but was honest and ultimately good, the words meant that much more and really resonated in Gi-yoon's heart. Now that he's in this situation again, he's given that same choice. And although Sang-woo was a horrible person, when Gyun's faced with killing again, just like he was before, he might recall Se-byuk's words, the same ones that stopped Gyun in his tracks in the first season. So I added the scene where he sees her again. I had to pull Gyun back. And I thought that beat was the most pivotal moment of season 1. So that's what Gyun needed to recall here, to help him stay true to who he was once again. It just seemed right.
Mister. Don't do it. That isn't you. You're a good person at heart.
Well, in that scene, I see myself in Gyun, and I think if someone said to me, "You're a good person at heart," right at the moment I was about to go down the wrong path, or maybe right as I was about to make the wrong decision in life, if someone had set me straight, put me on the right path earlier, then perhaps I could have stayed on the straight and narrow. Which is why, like Director Huang said earlier, if Inho had met someone back then, while he was in there playing the games, someone like Se-byuk, things could have gone differently. There's a chance that Inho never would have become frontman in that reality. It's an interesting thought. Inho! Why? Why'd you do it?
In this story, in the fictional world of Squid Game, the game is hosted by a specific group of people, but it's really a metaphor for the real world. A world in which capitalism drives relentless competition. So until all that stops, this game isn't going to stop. We see that the game in Korea, with Gyun's sacrifice, does come to an end. But I wanted to say, in other places though, the game is still going. Because really, the world at large hasn't changed yet. It's still the same. Plus, if we wrapped everything up, we'd have no reason to come back. And I don't think the fans would like that.
Squid Game. It was originally a children's game that was played in Korea many years ago.
I think the Squid games were the most memorable for me. There's the Squid game I play with Sang-woo in season 1, and then the Sky Squid game we play in season 3. Those two games, they're the ones that have the most shifts psychologically. And when you factor in how all the other players would react, it creates so much tension.
That last game was the toughest, physically as a director.
Out of everything?
Oh yeah. The shoot itself, well, it's the end. It's the grand finale. We're bringing the whole series to a close. There's so much pressure. I mean, the game itself is honestly very simple. But there's also lots of discussion, lots of back and forth. So making that fun, building tension each time a player falls, and then, of course, the twist. I was nervous about the whole thing, because it was all in front of the blue screens. So we had to imagine that sensation of height and how it was going to come across. I had to think about that while framing all the shots, too. It was difficult, very, very taxing throughout, because I got so ambitious with that scene. I wanted it to be perfect, and I was low on energy, so it wasn't easy.
I think, well, as a viewer, the six-legged pentathlon really stood out to me. That game was such a great idea, because the players, they know they have to kill each other, but there they have to work together. So you're able to see all these different sides to everyone. The concept of that game really stuck with me. I thought the six-legged pentathlon was a great addition. It was also an important opportunity for Frontman. It gave him a real chance to demonstrate the kind of person he used to be before he had experienced the games as Inho. He gets to openly show his emotions. He feels happy, excited, scared, just like all the other players. So even when we shot that scene, Director Huang and I agonized over to what extent I should let those emotions come through in my performance. But there are still so many fun moments, looking back at it.
The one scene where you slap yourself in the face, that made me crack up.
You piece of fucking shit!
For me, it's spinning top. Winding it, then you go, hold on, give me some room. It just felt so natural.
Oh, shit.
I hadn't given much thought to seasons 2 or 3 before writing them, so I started thinking, weighing all my options. But once I got going, the most interesting and important part was the entrance and exit of Inho. When the idea came to me, to have him be the last person to vote, just like old Nunu, and in doing so, determine the outcome of the whole thing. I thought, this is it. I agonized over his exit too, how he'd go. I wrote one version where he left later, staying till hide and seek, but killing Jungbei, then leaving the games. I thought that was the cruelest option, while faking his own death. So I wrote that, and plot-wise, those moments created major turning points, which determined the larger story, an overall arc of seasons 2 and 3. And well, the most important decision in season 3 was to give birth, to have the baby be born, and to give Gi-yoon his mission to protect it, and finally save the baby by sacrificing himself. Everything led me there. When I finally landed on that idea, I realized, it was all for this. It was to tell this story. That's why I started those years ago, first writing Squid Game back then, and now I've made it all the way here. And because of that, when I came up with the idea, I remembered I felt pretty proud of myself and couldn't help but get emotional about it.
Let's see. To be honest, well, I think the beginning of the story is so important. To me, it feels sort of necessary to see the situation Gi-yoon's in, in a moment to understand the circumstances that led him to enter into the games, and also what he has in his life that might give him this hope that if he goes in and plays, things might actually take a turn for the better. We get to ask, why does this man need that hope? So, when you have that premise, that initial setup from the first scene where Gi-yoon calls to join the game, then what that sets in motion, what gets expanded on from there, now that we've come all the way to season 3, it all seems very sad.
With Sang-woo's death, too, I felt a sense of loss and sadness. I mean, Sang-woo is a realist. He's smart, he's very calculating, and in a sense, even his death, I'd say it's very rational, too. If he takes Gi-yoon's hand, puts an end to the games, that means he'll end up back in hell, back to being broke with Gi-yoon, back to a mountain of debt. So he has that side, this rational, calculating side that leads him to take his own life, so Gi-yoon can leave with the money. That's why he can take such extreme measures. Lots of people actually bring this up. After they let everyone go, after the vote, they all end up coming back to the game because they're cornered by the hell of reality. In these kinds of stories, usually the players are trapped and it ends with them dreaming of escape. But here, there's a democratic process. They can actually leave if they want to. But they still come back because the reality of the outside world's even harsher. So, in the end, the game in our show, it's not unique or special, but it's symbolic because it's no different from the reality that many people face in the real world. And within this Squid Game The Challenge is the scripted drama that people have watched and loved